The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of the machines. Rows of glowing panels lit the space with a bluish tint. Reflecting off the polished floor, Commander Arya Vance stepped forward, her boots making soft clicks. Her eyes scanned the huge display before her. The Blood Archive was one of the most advanced technologies humanity had ever created. And today, it would choose her partner for a mission unlike any other. She inhaled deeply. Humanity had spread across the stars in the past 2 centuries. Colonies floated in asteroid belts. Massive orbital cities circled distant planets, and Earth remained the heart of human civilization. But as humanity expanded, dangers grew: alien species, rogue AI, and unpredictable cosmic phenomena. The Galactic Coalition, a council of advanced species, had warned that only the perfect match could survive the mission they were about to undertake. Arya's hand hovered over the touch panel. The Blood Archive wasn't just a machine, it was a system designed to scan the DNA, instincts, and psychological markers of millions of people. It could predict, with terrifying accuracy, who could survive the most dangerous situations. For centuries, humans had relied on it for interstellar missions that no ordinary soldier could complete. Today, it would pick her partner. One person. One human. Someone who would either live or die with her. The panel beeped softly, signaling that the search had begun. Arya watched the numbers flicker across the display. Each candidate's profile was scanned, assessed, and either rejected or shortlisted. She didn't need to see the details. She knew how precise the archive was. Its calculations were nearly flawless. Minutes passed, and the room felt colder. Arya's mind wandered, thinking of the mission ahead. The galaxy's fringe was unstable. A newly discovered wormhole in the Orion Spur had been growing at an alarming rate. Its gravitational forces threatened nearby colonies. If left unchecked, it could collapse and tear through several star systems. The Coalition needed someone who could survive the impossible, someone who could understand the unpredictable, someone who could make choices when all options seemed fatal. Finally, the machine stopped. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. The screen lit up with the name, Elias Cross. Arya blinked. She stared at it for a long moment. Something about the name made her hesitate. The selection could not be a mistake. The Blood Archive had never failed. It had chosen Elias Cross. She turned to the officer beside her, a young lieutenant named Marin. His eyes were wide, and his voice trembled slightly. "Commander, should we rerun the test? Maybe the archive glitched?" he asked. Arya shook her head. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, as she stared at the screen. "No, this is correct." Marin opened his mouth to argue but saw the determination in her eyes. He knew better than to question a decision made by the archive. Elias Cross. The name rolled over Arya's tongue like a question she couldn't answer. She didn't know him personally, but his records were clear. A civilian. A researcher. Not a soldier, not even a trained operative. Just a quiet mind dedicated to studying distant stars and cosmic phenomena. For a moment, Arya wondered if humanity had really come to this. Was a civilian really the key to surviving a mission that could decide the fate of entire star systems? Then, almost instinctively, she understood. The archive did not measure bravery, nor did it measure heroism in the usual sense. It measured potential. And sometimes, the most unlikely candidates carried the greatest strength. Her thoughts were interrupted by the door sliding open. A small transport robot rolled in, carrying a data tablet. Arya picked it up and scanned Elias's profile. His intelligence was extraordinary. His intuition about complex systems was unparalleled. But more than that, there was something subtle. His decisions in crisis simulations were always calm, calculated, yet flexible. "Interesting," she murmured, tracing the lines of his past work. "This man, he thinks differently than anyone else I've seen." Lieutenant Marin leaned closer. "Do you think he'll be able to handle the mission?" Arya didn't answer immediately. She knew that in human history, The greatest victories often came from the most unexpected heroes. Ordinary people had survived extraordinary circumstances countless times. Maybe, just maybe, Elias was the same. The intercom buzzed. A calm voice spoke. "Commander Vance, the candidate has been notified. He will arrive on the flagship in 4 hours." Arya nodded. She didn't feel nervous. She felt uneasy. There was a difference. She had led missions before, faced aliens and rogue AI, navigated collapsing space stations, and yet, something about this mission felt different. The uncertainty wasn't in the mission itself. It was in Elias. She left the control room and walked along the hallways of the Galactic Coalition flagship Resolute. The ship was a marvel of human engineering, sleek, fast, and reinforced to survive anything the galaxy could throw at it. Crew members moved efficiently, unaware of the choice the Archive had made. For them, the mission was another assignment. For Arya, it was personal. Her thoughts drifted back to Elias. What would he be like? Would he panic when faced with danger? Or would he surprise her with the kind of courage only humans could possess? The hangar bay doors opened, revealing the transport shuttle bringing Elias aboard. Arya watched as he stepped out. He was not tall, not muscular, not imposing in any way. He looked ordinary, too ordinary for someone about to face unimaginable dangers. Yet there was something in his eyes. Calm, steady, thoughtful. A spark of curiosity. Even as he scanned the massive ship around him, Arya approached him slowly. Every step felt heavy, as if the weight of the mission pressed down on her shoulders. Elias looked at her, uncertain. "Commander Vance?" he asked, his voice soft but firm. "Yes, Elias Cross," she replied. He nodded. "That's me. I don't understand." "Why me?" Arya smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Because the Blood Archive said so. You're perfect for this mission." Elias blinked. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not trained for combat. I study stars. I can't do this." Arya studied him carefully. She had faced soldiers who doubted themselves before a mission. But Elias's fear was different. It was honesty. He had never claimed to be something he was not. "That may be true," she said quietly, "but humanity has survived impossible odds before, Elias. We've adapted, we've improvised, and we've risen when no one expected us to. You are part of that legacy now." Elias looked down at his hands, clenching and unclenching them. After a long pause, he lifted his head. "Then, I will do my best." Arya nodded. That was all she needed. She could not ask for more. The rest of the day passed quickly. Elias was shown around the ship, introduced to the crew, and briefed on the mission. He absorbed every detail, asking questions that revealed a mind sharper than any soldier's tactical training. Arya watched him closely, noting how his brain worked differently. He didn't react with fear or blind aggression. He analyzed, calculated, and adapted. By the time evening came, Arya realized something important. The Blood Archive had not just chosen a partner. It had chosen someone who could complement her instincts, someone who could think in ways that machines could not. Later, she stood alone in her quarters, staring out at the stars. The galaxy stretched endlessly before her, filled with mysteries and dangers. Somewhere in the darkness, the wormhole awaited. Its forces were unpredictable, its potential for destruction immense, and yet, for the first time in days, Arya felt a spark of hope. The Archive's choice was not a gamble. It was an investment in humanity's greatest strength. Its ability to adapt, to endure, and to rise in the face of impossible odds. She whispered to herself, barely audible. "When I saw the results, I didn't understand. But now, I think I do." Somewhere deep inside, she knew the mission ahead would test every limit of human capability. But with Elias Cross by her side, maybe, just maybe, they could survive. And for a soldier who had faced countless battles, that hope was enough. The Resolute's corridors were alive with movement. Crew members hurried from one station to another. their boots echoing off polished metal floors. Machines hummed quietly in the background, monitoring distant stars and calculating complex trajectories. Yet, amidst all this efficiency, Commander Arya Vance walked calmly, her eyes fixed on Elias Cross. Elias, for his part, felt completely out of place. Everywhere he went, he noticed the soft buzz of energy shields, the subtle vibrations of engines, and the quiet, efficient coordination of the crew. His mind, normally focused on distant stars and mathematical models, was now filled with uncertainty. He had been plucked from the relative safety of his orbital research station and thrown into a warship designed for missions humans had only dreamed of surviving. Arya observed him silently. She could sense the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands fidgeted slightly whenever a group of armed soldiers passed. And yet, beneath that unease, there was a calm determination, a spark that told her the Blood Archive had chosen correctly. "Elias," she said, her voice breaking his thoughts. "I know this is difficult. I know you weren't expecting any of this. But I need you to trust yourself. Trust humanity. Trust your instincts." Elias shook his head. "I'm not a soldier, Commander. I've never fought anyone in my life. I don't know how to survive in combat." Arya stopped walking and faced him fully. "That's exactly why you're the right person. Soldiers follow orders. Machines follow patterns. But humans adapt. And right now, the galaxy needs someone who can adapt when nothing else makes sense." Elias's brow furrowed. He wanted to argue, to tell her that research and combat were worlds apart. But a small part of him, the part that had always solved impossible problems and predicted star patterns no one else could, told him she was right. The next few hours were spent introducing him to the crew and the ship. Elias listened carefully as engineers explained the ship's systems, and he watched as tacticians outlined possible scenarios for the mission. He asked questions, sometimes too many, and sometimes about things that seemed trivial to others. Yet Arya noticed that every question revealed a deeper understanding of how systems worked, how variables interacted, and how chaos could be controlled. Later, they reached the tactical observation deck. Large windows stretched across the wall, revealing the black expanse of space, dotted with stars. Beyond the stars, the wormhole awaited, a twisting, unstable mass of energy threatening to consume anything that came near. "Elias," Arya said, pointing toward the glowing distortion. "That is the reason we are here. That wormhole is expanding faster than we can predict. Its gravity is irregular, its structure unstable. Entire colonies are at risk. The Coalition cannot stop it without risking millions of lives. We have to enter it, study it, and if possible, stabilize it." Elias stared at the swirling colors. It looked chaotic, like the surface of a stormy sea. His mind raced, calculating the gravitational forces, estimating energy flows, and trying to predict what could happen next. "It's more unstable than I imagined," he murmured. "If we miscalculate even slightly, the ship could be torn apart. That's why I need you," Arya said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes held urgency. "I've led missions through hostile territory before. I can anticipate threats and react. But this is different. We need a mind that can see patterns machines can't, a mind that can solve problems on the fly. That's you, Elias. That's why the Archive chose you." He swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. For the first time, he felt the true scale of what he had been chosen for. He had always looked at the stars, curious and safe in his observations. Now, he was expected to navigate a deadly cosmic phenomenon with a woman who had survived battles he could barely imagine. The ship shuddered slightly as its engines adjusted course. Elias instinctively reached for the railing, steadying himself. Arya noticed and nodded. "Get used to it. The wormhole won't wait for anyone to feel ready. It doesn't care who you are." The hours passed slowly. Elias learned the basics of survival aboard a military ship. He practiced emergency procedures, familiarized himself with life support systems, and observed simulations of wormhole entry. Each time, his analytical mind caught details others missed. A slight irregularity in the simulated gravitational pull, a pattern in the way debris moved, a potential point of failure in the ship's energy distribution. By the time night fell in the artificial cycle of the ship, Elias felt exhausted. His mind, always active and alert, had been stretched in ways he had never imagined. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, there was a growing confidence. He could do this. He had to. Arya found him alone in the observation deck, staring at the wormhole again. "You're thinking too much," she said softly. "I have to," Elias replied. "If we make one wrong calculation, people could die. Entire colonies." His voice trailed off, the weight of his thoughts almost unbearable. "You're human," Arya said gently. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we think differently than machines, because we care. Machines can calculate probability, but they cannot feel, cannot make judgment calls based on what's right or necessary. That's why you're perfect. You care. You think. You can survive when others might fail." He looked at her, seeing the truth in her words. She had faced more danger than he could imagine, yet she had chosen him for a reason. The blood archive had not failed. It had selected someone ordinary in appearance, but extraordinary in potential. The next day, Arya arranged a training exercise for Elias. It was simple in theory. Navigate through a simulated gravitational anomaly, predict the movements of debris, and guide the ship safely through. For soldiers and AI, the exercise was straightforward. For Elias, it was terrifying, but he approached it with a methodical calm that surprised everyone. Hours passed, and the crew watched in awe as he corrected small errors, predicted outcomes no simulation could teach, and adapted instantly to changing conditions. Arya observed from the control console, her confidence in him growing with every successful maneuver. By the end of the day, Elias was exhausted, physically and mentally. Yet when he looked at Arya, she gave him a small nod of approval. "You're learning faster than I expected," she said. "You may not know it, but you're exactly what we need." Elias smiled faintly. For the first time, he felt that perhaps he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. Perhaps humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons, technology, or numbers, but in ordinary people, rising to extraordinary challenges. As night fell, the ship's artificial lighting dimmed. Elias sat by the observation deck, staring at the stars and the distant, unstable wormhole. He thought of Earth, of the quiet labs where he had studied celestial bodies, of the ordinary life he had left behind. And yet, he felt something he had never felt before. Purpose. Arya joined him, standing silently beside him. "Do you understand now why you were chosen?" she asked. "I think I do," Elias replied slowly. "Not because I'm strong, or fast, or trained, but because I can think, I can adapt, I can survive, and because humanity has always done the impossible." Arya smiled, a rare, soft expression. "Exactly. That is why we endure. That is why we rise. That is why you are my partner for this mission." For the first time, Elias felt a sense of belonging, not just as a civilian, not just as a researcher, but as a human capable of surviving the impossible alongside someone who believed in him. Outside the observation deck, the stars stretched endlessly. The wormhole twisted in the distance, a dangerous beauty that threatened to destroy everything in its path. And yet, inside the Resolute, two humans prepared to face it together. Commander Arya Vance, the battle-hardened leader, and Elias Cross, the reluctant civilian, chosen by the Blood Archive. The mission ahead would test them in ways neither could imagine. The galaxy would challenge their courage, their intellect, and their humanity. But together, they had a chance, because humans were unpredictable, resilient, and endlessly resourceful. And sometimes, that was enough to face the impossible. The Resolute drifted closer to the wormhole, its sleek hull reflecting the swirling colors of the unstable anomaly ahead. The crew moved with quiet efficiency, but beneath their professional calm, tension ran high. Every instrument on the ship vibrated with the raw energy radiating from the wormhole, and the readings changed faster than any human or machine could predict. Commander Arya Vance stood on the bridge, scanning the displays with practiced precision. Beside her, Elias Cross felt a mix of awe and fear. The wormhole was nothing like the simulations he had seen. It twisted and pulsed unpredictably, like a living storm of light and gravity. Debris spun within its edges, some pieces glowing as they burned from friction and radiation. "This is more chaotic than I imagined," Elias murmured, his hands brushing the railing as he leaned closer to a console. His mind raced, calculating gravitational vectors, rotational forces, and energy spikes. Each formula led to more questions than answers. Arya glanced at him. "Good. You're thinking the way I need you to think. Remember, machines can predict patterns, but they can't improvise when the impossible happens. That's why we rely on humans. Because we can adapt." Elias nodded, swallowing his fear. The responsibility felt immense. One miscalculation, one hesitation, could mean the end not just for him and Arya, but for the colonies nearby. Yet, as he looked at the wormhole, a strange calm settled over him. His mind began to see patterns within the chaos, connections that others would never notice. The ship's sensors suddenly beeped in rapid succession. Arya's eyes snapped to the display. "An energy spike. Brace yourself. It's coming from the wormhole's core." The Resolute shuddered violently. Crew members gripped their stations as the ship rocked. Lights flickered, and alarms wailed softly. Elias instinctively reached for the navigation controls. The gravitational pull is uneven. If we don't adjust immediately, we'll be caught in a spin. Arya's hands moved over her console with precision, issuing commands to stabilize the ship. "Shields up. Engines at 80%. Compensate for rotation vector Delta 7. Elias's calculations ran faster than he realized. He spotted a subtle fluctuation in the energy field, a small gap where the gravitational force would weaken for a few seconds. "Commander, wait, that gap, we can use it. If we adjust the trajectory now, we might avoid the worst of it." Arya looked at him for a brief moment. His eyes were focused, his voice steady despite the shaking of the ship. She trusted him. "Do it," she said. The ship tilted, its engines roaring as Elias's suggested adjustments guided it through the turbulence. For a brief moment, it felt like the ship was suspended in nothing, floating between order and chaos. Then, with a violent lurch, they cleared the worst of the energy spike. The crew exhaled collectively. Elias sagged against the console, his mind still racing. Arya placed a hand on his shoulder. "See? You're not just surviving. You're guiding us. This is why you were chosen." Elias allowed himself a faint smile, though the weight of the mission pressed heavily on him. I don't know how I'm doing this," he admitted. "You're doing it because you're human," Arya replied. "Humans survive when others fail. Machines follow logic. Humans follow instincts, intuition, and sometimes courage." For hours, they navigated deeper into the wormhole. The ship's sensors barely kept up with the rapidly shifting energy fields. Every second presented new threats: floating debris that could puncture the hull, sudden energy surges that threatened to overload the engines, and strange gravitational pockets that twisted time slightly, making even the crew's movements feel sluggish. Elias noticed a pattern in the distortion. "Commander, look at the eddies here. They're not random. They spin in a repeating rhythm. If we follow this rhythm, we can stabilize the ship enough to get closer to the core." Arya's eyes widened. "You're right. No machine would notice that. Only a human mind could see it and react fast enough. Prepare the course correction." The crew followed his instructions, adjusting thrusters, shields, and energy outputs. The Resolute moved with a new grace, slipping between the chaotic forces that threatened to tear it apart. As they approached the wormhole's center, something unexpected appeared. Shadows of massive shapes flickered within the energy, a hint of intelligent presence. Elias's eyes narrowed. "Commander, there's something inside. Something alive. Or at least, aware of us." Arya's face hardened. "Prepare for contact. Keep shields at maximum. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The ship's communication system suddenly picked up low-frequency pulses. They weren't words. Not in any language Elias recognized, but the patterns were deliberate. Someone or something was trying to communicate. Elias studied the pulses carefully. "These patterns, they're not random. They're a warning. Something wants us to turn back, or it could attack." Arya clenched her jaw. "We can't turn back. The wormhole is too dangerous. And the colonies are counting on us." We proceed with caution. The closer they got, the more the energy intensified. Sparks of electricity danced across the ship's hull, and the gravitational shifts became almost unbearable. Crew members gritted their teeth, relying on stabilizers to avoid injury. Elias worked tirelessly at the console, analyzing fluctuations and adjusting the ship's path in real time. Hours passed. Exhaustion weighed on everyone, but there was no time to rest. Finally, the core of the wormhole came into view, a swirling mass of light and shadow, twisting impossibly fast, almost alive. Elias froze for a moment. "It's beautiful, terrifying, and alive in a way I've never seen." Arya placed a hand on his arm. "Focus, Elias. Observation is good, but survival is better. Guide us through this." He nodded, and his mind worked like a machine guided by instinct. Every pattern, every pulse, every twist of light became data. He predicted the core's movements, synchronized the ship's engines, and adjusted shields with split-second timing. The Resolute passed through the core, its hull groaning as if complaining at the impossible forces it endured. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the turbulence eased. They emerged into a strange calm, a pocket within the wormhole where the energy stabilized, revealing the interior's true nature. Inside, Elias and Arya saw something no simulation had predicted. A network of massive, alien structures suspended within the swirling energy. Towering forms of unknown material glowed faintly, connected by threads of energy that pulsed in rhythm with the wormhole itself. "Architects," Arya whispered. "The records mentioned them. They're ancient, and they don't want us here." Elias studied the structures carefully. "They're not attacking, yet, but they're aware, and they're testing us, probing our reactions." Suddenly, a shockwave of energy struck the ship, throwing the crew off balance. Alarms blared. Arya immediately issued commands, but Elias anticipated the wave's origin before the sensors could fully register it. "Starboard thrusters! Vector correction Delta 5. The ship responded instantly, gliding through the shockwave with minimal damage. The crew stared at him in awe. Arya's face softened slightly. This is why the Archive chose you. You see things before they happen. Humans adapt in ways no AI can. Things, Argen's ways no AI can." Elias's confidence grew, though he remained cautious. He realized that the wormhole and the alien structures were not just obstacles, they were challenges designed to test human potential. And humans, unlike any other species, could rise to meet impossible challenges when they relied on intellect, courage, and teamwork. As the ship drifted closer to the central structure, Arya and Elias prepared for the next stage of the mission. They would need to understand the alien network, decipher its purpose, and possibly confront whatever intelligence controlled it. The survival of human colonies depended on it. Elias looked at the commander. "We can do this. Together." Arya nodded. "Together. That's the only way we survive. Humanity survives because we work as one. Because we trust. Because we fight when no one else will. And right now, that's exactly what we must do." For the first time, Elias felt truly ready. Not because he was a soldier, not because he was trained for combat, but because he was human, and humans always found a way to survive the impossible. Outside, the wormhole twisted and roared, alive with energy. Inside the Resolute, two humans prepared to face the unknown, relying on intellect, instinct, and courage. And the galaxy would soon learn that humans, unpredictable and resilient, were not so easily defeated. The alien structures loomed before the Resolute like silent sentinels, glowing with energy that pulsed in an unsteady rhythm. Every meter closer revealed more detail. Massive towers made of a material that seemed neither metal nor stone, connected by webs of energy that shimmered and danced. The wormhole's violent storm surrounded them, but inside this pocket, the environment was eerily calm. Commander Arya Vance stood on the bridge, eyes sharp, hands steady. "Elias, these aren't natural formations," she said. "They're deliberate, intelligent. We're inside the heart of something that was built, controlled, and maybe even alive." Elias nodded, his mind racing. "They're not attacking directly, but they're observing us. Every movement we make is recorded, analyzed. If we make a mistake, we won't survive." Arya's jaw tightened. "We have no choice. We need to understand them, and if possible, neutralize whatever threat they pose. Humanity can't afford to retreat." Arya's jaw. The crew of the Resolute prepared for the unknown. Weapons were armed, shields reinforced, and sensor arrays tuned to detect even the faintest anomaly. Arya and Elias leaned over the navigation console, studying the alien structures carefully. Elias's eyes lit up with recognition. "The energy flows. They follow a pattern. If we can predict the rhythm, we can move through the network without triggering their defenses." Arya raised an eyebrow. "Predict the rhythm?" "Explain." Elias pointed at the display. "Look at the pulses along the energy threads connecting the towers. Each pulse occurs in a repeating cycle. But there are slight variations. If we time our approach with those variations, we can reach the central node safely." Arya nodded slowly. "Machines couldn't do this. Only a human mind can notice such subtle patterns and react fast enough. That's why you're here. If you five alone to hold rhyme." For hours, Elias guided the ship through the alien web, dodging sudden bursts of energy that erupted unpredictably. The crew followed his directions, and the Resolute moved like a dancer threading its way through a dangerous storm. Suddenly, the central structure's energy flared, sending a wave of force toward the ship. It slammed against the hull, throwing crew members off balance. Alarms blared. Arya gritted her teeth. "Evasive maneuvers. Shields to maximum. Brace for impact." Elias's mind worked frantically. "Wait. The energy is pulsing in a repeating sequence. If we reverse our thrust and match the pulse, we can ride the wave instead of resisting it." Arya hesitated, then nodded. "Do it." The ship twisted, engines straining, shields flaring. For a tense moment, it seemed impossible. But then the wave passed, and the Resolute remained intact. Crew members exchanged astonished glances. "Remarkable," Arya said quietly. "You didn't just survive, you predicted it." Elias exhaled, his body tense. "It's not prediction alone, it's observation and adaptation. That's what humans do best. We survive where others fail." The central node pulsed again, and this time, the energy formed shapes shimmering. Vaguely humanoid silhouettes that flickered like mirages. The architects, as Arya had called them, were aware. They weren't simply machines or natural phenomena. They were intelligent, ancient beings who controlled the wormhole itself. One of the silhouettes extended an energy tendril toward the ship, probing. The Resolute shuddered as systems registered the interference. Sensors went haywire for a brief moment, and crew members held their ground tightly. Elias studied the pulses. "They're scanning us, trying to map our neural patterns, our decision-making speed. If they find weaknesses, they'll exploit them." Arya's gaze hardened. We don't have time for hesitation. We need to act. Focus on defense. While we gather as much information as we can, the ship's tactical systems automatically responded to the energy pulses, but Elias intervened manually, guiding shields and engines with precision. Each adjustment was a calculated counter to the architect's probing, allowing the ship to remain stable. Hours passed in tense silence. Then the architects made their first direct attempt at interference. A wave of energy targeted Elias, specifically, attempting to overload his cognitive patterns. Lights flickered across the bridge, and the hum of machines reached a dissonant pitch. "Commander," Elias shouted, gripping the console. "They're trying to disrupt my calculations. I need a clear neural channel." Arya didn't hesitate. She placed herself between him and the nearest interface panel. "Not while I'm here," she said firmly. "You focus. I'll shield you. Humanity has survived worse. I. 4. The energy wave hit her, but Arya's shields held. Sparks danced across the surface of the console. Yet the Resolute remained steady. Elias, free from the interference, continued his calculations, adjusting the ship's path and shields in real time. The architects seemed to hesitate, as if surprised by the human response. They had underestimated the ability of humans to act unpredictably, to protect one another, and to adapt instantaneously. Elias's voice broke the tense silence. "I see it. A weakness in their energy network. If we can overload that node, it could destabilize the architect's control of the wormhole." Arya glanced at the glowing structure ahead. "Are you sure? One wrong move and the wormhole could collapse, taking us with it." Elias nodded. "It's the only chance. Trust me." Arya hesitated for a heartbeat, then said firmly, "We trust humans, because they find a way. Let's do it." The Resolute moved closer, guided by Elias's calculations. Every pulse, every energy fluctuation, was accounted for. The crew followed his lead, adjusting shields, thrusters, and power distribution. The ship moved as a single organism, synchronized to Elias's intuition and calculations. Finally, they reached the critical node. Elias directed the ship's energy systems to focus a pulse that matched the rhythm of the architect's network, overloading it precisely. The effect was instantaneous. A shock wave rippled through the structures, and the energy threads connecting the towers began to destabilize. The architects emitted a soundless pulse that rattled the ship, but the Resolute held firm. Systems stabilized as the central node collapsed, severing the architect's control over the wormhole. Arya exhaled, her face softening for the first time in hours. "You did it. You actually did it." Elias sagged against the console, exhaustion overtaking him. "We did it," he corrected, glancing at her. "Because we worked together." The wormhole's violent forces began to subside. The swirling chaos became manageable, and for the first time, the ship drifted in a calm pocket of space. Human ingenuity, cooperation, and adaptability had triumphed over an intelligence far older and seemingly more powerful than themselves. Arya looked at Elias, her voice quiet but firm. "I knew the archive was right. You weren't chosen because you were the strongest or the fastest. You were chosen because humans survive where others fail. And you embody that perfectly." Elias nodded, still catching his breath. It's incredible. The architects, they were testing us, weren't they?" "Yes," Arya replied. "They didn't understand one thing. Humans don't just adapt to survive. We fight for one another. We make impossible decisions in impossible situations. That's why they underestimated us." The crew, though exhausted, began assessing the ship's systems. Damage was minor, thanks to Elias's precise calculations and Arya's leadership. Systems hummed back to full capacity, and the crew allowed themselves quiet smiles of relief. Humanity had faced a danger beyond imagination and survived. Elias looked out at the remnants of the alien structures. "We've won the first stage," he said quietly. But there's still work to do. The wormhole isn't fully stabilized yet. Arya placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we keep going. We survived this challenge because humans can do the impossible. That's what we are. That's what you are. For the first time, Elias truly understood the weight of the Blood Archive's choice. It hadn't measured strength, or speed, or experience. It measured potential, the capacity to rise above fear, to adapt, to survive against impossible odds. And now, humanity had proven that even against the oldest and most powerful intelligence in the wormhole, they could not be defeated. As the Resolute prepared to move deeper into the heart of the anomaly, Elias felt something he had never felt before. Confidence born not from training or weapons, but from knowing that humans, with their flaws and unpredictability, could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. And Commander Arya Vance knew it too. Humanity had won again. Not because it was the strongest, but because it was clever, resilient, and united. The mission was far from over, but one thing was clear. Humans would rise where others would fall. The Resolute drifted in the calm heart of the wormhole, but calm was only temporary. The alien structures, the remnants of the Architect's network, were unstable, their energy flickering in chaotic bursts. Commander Arya Vance stood on the bridge, her eyes scanning the displays. Every pulse, every wave of energy, was unpredictable. Beside her, Elias Cross worked tirelessly at the navigation console, analyzing gravitational fluctuations and energy patterns. His mind was sharp, even after hours of continuous calculations, and he moved with a calm precision that made the crew trust him completely. Arya glanced at him. "Elias, how much longer until we can stabilize the wormhole?" He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "If we overload the central node and redirect the energy flow, we can force the wormhole to stabilize. But it's risky. One wrong adjustment, and the collapse could destroy the ship and everything nearby." Arya's gaze hardened. "We don't have a choice. If we don't act, the wormhole will expand and consume nearby colonies. Humanity needs us to succeed." The crew moved into position. Shields at maximum, weapons armed, thrusters ready. Elias tapped into every sensor on the ship, every display, every calculation. He traced patterns within the alien energy, predicting fluctuations with a precision that made even the most seasoned officers nod in approval. "Commander," he said quietly, "I can do this, but I'll need you to protect the ship. The overload may create a backlash strong enough to tear the hull apart if we're not careful." Arya smiled faintly. "I've never let anyone down, Elias. Not now. Not ever. You focus on your calculations. I'll handle the rest." For a tense few minutes, the ship moved into position. The central node of the alien structure glowed brighter, its pulses erratic and violent. Energy waves rippled through the wormhole, threatening to destabilize the entire structure. Elias adjusted the ship's systems in real time, feeding the calculated pulses directly into the ship's energy conduits. "We're almost there," he whispered to himself. His hands flew over the controls, manipulating shields, thrusters, and energy distribution simultaneously. A sudden surge of energy erupted from the central node, slamming into the Resolute. Alarms blared, lights flickered, and the hull groaned under the force. Crew members held their ground, gripping rails and consoles to stay steady. "Brace for impact," Arya shouted. She reinforced shields, rerouted power, and used every defensive maneuver she knew to protect the ship. Sparks flew along the bridge as the energy pulse struck again, but the ship held firm. Elias's mind worked faster than ever. He noticed a subtle pattern in the energy fluctuations, a gap lasting less than a second. "Now!" he shouted. "Divert full energy into the node. Synchronize with the pulse." Arya gave a sharp nod. "Engage." The Resolute surged forward, energy from its core directed at the alien node. The pulse matched the rhythm Elias had predicted, overwhelming the central structure. A shockwave of light and force erupted, shaking the wormhole violently. Crew members gritted their teeth, holding on as the hull strained. The wormhole twisted, the alien structures quivering under the sudden overload. Then, as if the universe itself had paused, the energy subsided. The node collapsed in on itself, its control over the wormhole severed. Silence filled the bridge. The crew exhaled collectively, realizing they had survived the most dangerous part of the mission. The wormhole, while still active, had stabilized enough to prevent immediate destruction. Colonies nearby were no longer at immediate risk. Humanity had won, at least for now. Arya turned to Elias, her face softening. "You did it. I didn't just see it, I felt it. Humanity is still standing because of you. Not because of weapons, not because of machines, but because you adapted, thought, and survived where others would have failed." Elias shook his head, exhausted. "It wasn't just me. It was you too. Your leadership, your decisions, your trust. Without you protecting the ship, none of this would have been possible." Arya smiled faintly. "You are my final choice, Elias. Not because the Blood Archive said so, but because humans always rise to meet the impossible. Together, we proved that." Elias blinked, processing her words. "Yes," Arya replied softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I saw the results of the Blood Archive, I didn't understand, but now I do. You weren't chosen for what you could do alone. You were chosen for what humanity can do when we trust each other. That's why you are my partner and my final choice." Elias felt a warmth spread through him. He had doubted himself when he first arrived on the Resolute. He had thought he was unprepared, unfit for survival in the chaotic void. But now, he understood. Humans were more than their training, more than their weapons. Humans could survive, adapt, and overcome, even against impossible odds. Outside, the wormhole continued to twist, but its fury was diminished. The alien structures, the architects, and their vast intelligence had been challenged, and humanity had endured. The Resolute began its journey back to stable space, the crew working efficiently to repair minor damage and monitor the remaining wormhole energy. Arya and Elias stayed at the bridge, quiet but alert, knowing that the mission's success depended not just on what they had done, but on what humanity had proven. Elias finally relaxed slightly, allowing himself to look at Arya fully. "I understand now," he said quietly. "The Blood Archive didn't just pick me, it picked what humans can do at their best, and that is incredible." Arya nodded. "It is. And that is why humans survive when others fail. You saw the impossible, adapted to it, and overcame it. That's the heart of humanity." For the first time since the mission began, Elias felt a sense of completion. He had been chosen, trained, tested, and proven. And he had survived not because he was special in a conventional sense, but because he had embraced the qualities that made humans extraordinary. As the Resolute exited the wormhole's edge, the galaxy spread before them. Stars twinkled like scattered gems. Planets rotated silently, and the vast expanse of space seemed calm once more. Humanity had survived another test, and for Elias and Arya, the lesson was clear. Courage, intelligence, and trust were more powerful than any weapon. Arya placed a hand on the console and looked at Elias. "We have one last task," she said softly. "Report our findings to the Coalition. Make sure they know the wormhole is stabilized, and that ordinary humans can survive what even the oldest intelligences cannot." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of pride. "I will. But I also need to remember something. Humanity survived because we didn't act alone. You believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That makes all the difference." Arya's eyes softened. "Exactly. And that's why humans are stronger than any machine, more adaptable than any calculation, and capable of rising above impossible odds. You saw that today, Elias. And now, the galaxy will see it too." The crew celebrated quietly, aware of the enormous risk they had survived. The wormhole was no longer a threat. And humanity had proven once more why it thrived in a universe full of dangers. Elias looked at Arya again, her calm determination and faith in him filling him with confidence he had never felt before. "I finally understand," he said, smiling faintly. It wasn't about being the strongest. It wasn't about being trained. It was about being human. And humans, we rise to challenges no one else can survive. Arya nodded, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. "And that's why, when I saw the results of the blood archive, I knew you were the one. You are my final choice. Humanity's final choice." Elias felt the weight of those words sink in. He had survived the impossible, proven the strength of human adaptability, and discovered that courage and intelligence were humanity's greatest weapons. And as the Resolute began its journey home, he knew that no matter what dangers awaited in the galaxy, ordinary humans would always rise. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and for the first time, Elias felt that he belonged not just to the mission, but to humanity's legacy. And Commander Arya Vance, standing beside him, knew one truth more clearly than ever. When humans choose to rise together, no force in the universe could stand against them.